this recording then of She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron. As normal, we're looking at the 3 assessment criteria, AO1, AO2, AO3. Please pause the recording to have a closer look at that. Level 5 then is your grades 7 to 9. Level 3, according to the boxes on the screen there, is around about your pass grade, and level 1 is about your grade 3 or lower. Here we go then, Lord Byron himself, a bit infamous for his time, probably the most outrageous poet in the collection. Byron was infamous for his love of both women and men, and was scandalous for his numerous affairs. We might wonder whether the attraction he feels for the woman in the poem is purely physical, okay, but it's not love or sex. Okay, he is admiring her beauty rather than anything else. Lord Byron fought hard to be part of the aristocracy, seemingly objectifying all those around him. Yet in the poem he appears critical of the superficial nature of the 19th century society, where looks were becoming more important than the person themselves. Perhaps he was fed up of being judged for his infamous behaviour. He comes from a poorer background than you might think. Looking at the picture, you might think aristocracy. But in fact, his father took his family's money when he was very young, and his mother was clinically insane. The poem is said to be inspired by an event in Byron's life. While at a funeral, Byron saw Mrs. Anne Beatrix Wilmot, the wife of his cousin Robert Wilmot. She was wearing a black sparkly gown. This is what he describes in the poem, this dress that seems like stars in the night sky. He was struck by her unusual beauty, and the next morning the poem was written.
This sensual adventurer travelled from his ancestral home on a voyage where his life and art became one, igniting unprecedented fame and infamy. I want to discover how the extreme experiences of his journey turned an obscure poet into a best-selling phenomenon and the original anti-hero. On his exotic adventures, Byron travelled with an entourage and 17 cabin trucks. I'm travelling light, following him across Europe to the Orient, via Portuguese hookers, Albanian bandit country, and Italian royalty. Seeking out Byron's marbled halls of sodomy and sherbet, abusing embassy hospitality, and like him, ending up at the VD clinic. Byron was Britain's most successful poet and really her first international celebrity. With the vanity and the sexual appetites of a modern rock star, even those who adored him were forced to admit that he was mad, bad, and dangerous to know.
Byron then, the first modern rock star. Here is his poem then. She Walks in Beauty.
She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell of days and goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent.
Byron describing the extreme physical beauty of this almost ethereal woman. She seems almost like a god in the poem itself. He seems to admire her grace, her tress, her face, slowly looking her up and down then, looking at how different beauty is shown in different ways, both on her outer appearance and perhaps her inner soul as well. She Walks in Beauty. Here you're going to see then some notes around the outside of the poem to give you an idea of the kind of thing you might want to talk about in the actual test. We start with the notes in black, which are all references to structure. The title itself prompts a sense of unknown and mystery. Who is this she being spoken about here? Where is she walking? How can she walk in beauty? It's as if she is almost exuding beauty around her as well as being beautiful herself. The repetition in the first line of the title emphasises the physical appearance of the woman, exaggerating then this woman walking towards Byron and almost this aura around her of extreme beauty and perfection. She is described as being like the night, as if she's dark, mysterious, and Byron wants to find out more. The sibilance of starry skies suggests she has a divine or spiritual quality. She is stunning to look at, and these ideas tend to flow throughout the rest of the poem. She is the best of heaven and hell. She's described as the best of dark and bright. She is above more normal mortals or human ideas. Byron himself, obviously a man of quite an interesting background, is almost made to feel small in comparison with this extremely beautiful woman. Then we have this more of an insight into her actual personality, thus mellowed to that tender light. The word tender implies her personality and inner perfection. She is warm, calm, and caring, which heaven the gaudy day denies. Seems to suggest then that she's always heavenly, the capital H there implying God's heaven. The last note goes back to the word mellow, suggesting to us, the reader, that Byron was humbled by her. He almost forgets who he is when he looks at her. The last line of this stanza then, or this section, gaudy day denies, makes it seem like the day itself is seemingly dull compared with this woman. The harsh plosive d sound suggests an almost anger as Byron realises how bad reality is, or his life is, compared with her. He looks at everything around him and everything now seems grey by comparison. One shade more, one ray the less. Notice here it links back to the sunshine, the idea of ray, brightness and beauty. The poem then uses a semantic field linking to heaven as if she's pure and godly. How many links to heaven can you find? Please look through your own copy of the poem and highlight the many, many links there are. Each stanza follows an A-B rhyme scheme to imply the purity and simplicity of the woman's beauty. She is simple, she is innocent, and everything about her is beautiful. Her beauty cannot be described, yet Byron is doing exactly that in the poem. So the nameless grace is perhaps slightly ironic. Byron, perhaps in arrogance, tries to indeed write about this nameless grace. It then goes on to describe this raven tress. Now, a tress is part of a dress, and this might remind Byron of an elegant dress, indeed, the dress that the woman is wearing in the funeral where he actually sees her. The idea of a raven is interesting, as if you type into Google raven and what it might symbolise, it comes up with wisdom, truth, and perhaps rebirth. Byron then may be discovering something about himself as he looks at this woman. Grace rhymes with face, which again implies the innocence and purity of the person being described. Where thoughts serenely sweet express, this suggests her ideas and mind are as pure and innocent as her looks. And now the last section of the poem. We have here, as he describes the cheek, the brow, and both those parts of the face being soft, calm, and eloquent, this almost dissects her beauty. He's studying her in detail, wondering where that beauty is coming from. This is a list of facial parts, then, that Byron is seeking to understand. He then uses a tricolon, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent. Each part here describes part of her personality, but each one isn't quite as good as the next on the list. So he starts off by describing her as soft, perhaps maybe caring. He then goes on to say so calm, exaggerating then her peacefulness. She seems to seems to have, and then goes on to say she's eloquent, which suggests perhaps someone sophisticated, a beauty that's hard to describe, but also perhaps something that's quite high class or quite precious. We then have this idea of smiles that win. The woman clearly notices Byron's attention and smiles at him, and he can't help but smile back in awe. He's overwhelmed by her beauty, and because she's smiling at him, he then becomes a better man inside. Byron repeatedly objectifies the woman by keeping going back to his physical appearance. He uses her sets of features to contrast with her personality and her temperament, which are of course equal to her looks. The last line of the poem, "A heart whose love is innocent," sometimes ends with an exclamation mark. This might suggest that Byron is shocked and surprised at how much he has been affected by her beauty. The same effect is created in the final reference to her heart, "a heart whose love is innocent." He's amazed that someone so good looking on the outside can be equally pure on the inside. This is quite unusual. The key things to remember about this poem then. Who is it about? Well, it's about a man who sees a woman and is captivated by her physical and spiritual beauty. What is it about? This man, probably Byron himself, marvels at this almost godlike beauty of the woman, exploring her face, looks and movements, yet he realises that simple words are not enough to do her justice. Why was it written? Byron is writing a classic romantic poem in an effort to describe pure beauty. He is trying throughout the poem then to describe what real beauty is like and unpick how it was created. We now go on then to look at three key quotes from the poem. The criteria just for quotes alone is on the right-hand side. Our first quote then, "Like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies." Please freeze the screen then when all the thought bubbles appear, so you can copy those into your own anthologies. And quote number 2. And quote number 3. The double spaces here indicate where a new line would start in the poem itself. Now we've looked at the poem then in some depth, we've unpicked what you might say about the structure, we've looked at the language, we've looked at some of the key quotes that might help you through the test itself. Let's think about how to turn that into an essay. As normal, there is the 9-point plan on the board there, and you've got the key parts that are necessary highlighted in red, number 1, 4, 5, 6 and 9. You're now going to look then at a particular essay and how to turn all these wonderful notes into an actual exam response. This is the question I'm going to pose today then. How far is the speaker in Byron's "She Walks in Beauty" only concerned with the woman's physical appearance? The key words of the quote here then is physical appearance. We're concentrating on physical beauty here, as opposed perhaps to the raw natural beauty being described into autumn. When it says how far is the speaker, this implies there's an argument to be had here then. The poem is not just about physical appearance, and the exam board expect us to comment on this. How far suggests that we're going to look at physical appearance, but also take the answer further, looking at actually her personality as well. Here then is a really good opening that I've already colour-coded. Simplistically, Lord Byron focuses on the overwhelming beauty of a woman in his poem, "She Walks in Beauty." However, as we look closer, although interested in physical, he also talks about her heart, personality and soul. You can see the links there in blue, as I first of all say what most people would think the poem's about. So if you hadn't studied in that much detail, you'd say, yes, it is about physical beauty. But then I show the examiner that I'm willing to look closer. I'm examining the poem in a bit more depth than most of the people in the test. However, as we look closer, it implies you're going to unpick the poem. You'll notice in the background here, there is an iceberg. This is how I tend to think of poems. We've got the basic meaning at the top here, and then you've got the hidden meaning under the surface. As you can see, this is what I'm showing in my exam answer. It's got an obvious meaning, and then one under the surface. Notice the words in orange there link to the question I'm being asked. I then have my second paragraph then, my main paragraph, containing the quotes, which means this is where most of the grade would come from. From the outset, Byron is clearly astounded by the beauty of his subject. The line, like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, is important as he suggests to us that it isn't just about physical beauty, it compares her to God's world. The sibilant starry skies suggest the woman is more than just human. She's also beauty and that she's above the world. This makes us think that Byron wants us to appreciate how physically beautiful the woman is, but also how much better she is than other women he has seen. You can see I've got a quote in the second sentence, and the links to the question set are again in orange. To show you then how this is actually written, step 1 was to make a clear statement about the part of the poem studied. This doesn't use quotes. In this case, I'm looking at the beginning of the poem, so I start with from the outset. If it was the middle of the poem, I would begin with as the poem develops, and if I was choosing quotes from the end of the poem, it might say something like by the conclusion or by the end of the poem. I then have included a 5-word quote. It'd be a really good idea to use around about that number of words for the quote, that way you've got a chance to analyse one of them later. Notice that I've also used 2 lines of the poem, because without that I wouldn't be able to look at enjambment, which is part of what I might have to do for a higher grade. I then explain the full quote, why that quote was important. After all, any quote I've chosen is one of maybe 10, 15 lines at least that I could have actually commented on. I want to tell the exam board why I chose this particular line and what makes this line important. Perhaps most importantly, step 6 then, I then start to analyse a quote. Now the full quote was, like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies. Analyse means zoom in, so I've looked in particularly here at the phrase starry skies and have tried to explain why those particular words were chosen by Byron and what the effect of those words is. Step 9 is then a clear link to the reader. By reader, I mean words like us, or we, or I, or perhaps you. Clearly showing then what the reader is supposed to be thinking about, linked to the question set. In this case, I've used the word us. This makes us think. If I split this apart then, you can see the main parts of this answer. I've deliberately left blanks in certain places. From the outset, Byron is clearly astounded by the beauty of his subject. Now, what can I add to that? What can I put in this gap then that will add to the grade? Well, I haven't mentioned anything about Byron himself, something that was covered earlier in the clip. So if I put my marker there in the centre, I could think, well, what do I know about Byron that would make my grade go up by mentioning something about the context, AO3? Well, Byron himself saw this woman. It's a real situation. So I could write, Byron was inspired by a woman he saw. This is a real event. I'm showing the examiner there then that I do know something about the poet himself, highlighted now in red, to get my marks for AO3. I then analyse the line. As you can see, I talk about how important the line is, I look at individual words from it. But because I've chosen 2 lines here, I'm able to comment on enjambment. So in the second gap here, I'm going to add to the grade once more by then adding something about either the tone, the enjambment, or perhaps the sentence structure. Now I might start off by saying something about the tone. Now tone implies how the line would be spoken, how it would be said. So like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, the CC, cloudless climes, and the sibilant, starry skies, makes it sound almost reflective. So that's what I would need to say. The tone here is reflective. As if Byron, always mention the name of the poet as often as you can. Reflective as if Byron is studying her beauty compared with nature. I now get some marks then for structure there, but I can also comment on enjambment. The lines are split here, as if the reader, ourselves, is comparing the woman in the poem with natural beauty and the mystery of the night. So, the lines are split here as if the reader is comparing the woman in the poem with natural beauty and the mystery of the night. You'll notice the line gaps are here. Like the night, pause, it goes to the next line of the poem, of cloudless climes. I'm supposed to think about the word night and compare then this dark gown the woman's wearing to the beauty of the starry night sky. I then add on the end then my links to the reader and what we think Byron wants to say. If I put that answer together then with both of the new sections added, there you go, in red, that has then turned something like a grade 5 answer into more like a 6 or maybe a 7. Okay, that then is our talk through for today for She Walks in Beauty.